The year 2023 is set to be dominated by political parties scrambling to attract voters ahead of what is predicted to be a hotly contested 2024 national election. 2022 certainly had no dull moments with local government politics, seeing two mayors being axed, several former leaders forming political parties, and the ANC elective conference, among others. I'm now joined by political analyst Dr. Ongama Mtimka. Dr. Mtimka, good afternoon. Happy New Year to you. Great to speak to you on this second day of January 2023. 2022, in many ways, would some suggest to paint a perspective of what 2023 and certainly what we can look forward to as far as the 2024 election landscape is concerned. Now, give us your perspective on what we can expect in 2023.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you, Hugo, and a blessed New Year to you and your viewers. So I think there are four broad areas from which we can expect change. It's at the level of the rebuilding of the state and state institutions. It's party politics. It's the realm of local government and the wider socioeconomic dynamics in the country. When it comes to state building, what we're going to be looking at is the process of what to do with the recommendations of the State Capture Commission, and whether President Cyril Ramaphosa is going to be able to lead a state that becomes a lot more professional and can achieve better results. And we know that what has a bearing on the ability to do that is both his will and his ability to lead government, but also it has to do with the party political environment that he's going to find himself in, which led me to that second point about parties. There, I think that we are going to see his consolidated power at the level of the party, and what the question the question that remains on many people is, to what extent are the curveballs that are going to be coming from reports about him personally, to what extent will they have implications on the extent to which he's able to continue as a leader, and to what extent could that create some instability as far as the presidential office is concerned. I don't think that's something that's going to go away. It's going to linger for the entire period up until the elections and after.
Well,
we know there are many others.
Dr. Mtimka, if you'll allow me to come in there, we know for a fact that President Cyril Ramaphosa has faced a number of challenges over the last 12 to 18 months, if you will. The Phala issue being the most recent one, and he's obviously survived that. For all intents and purposes, it would appear that he might see out certainly this remaining term and not really have issues around that. But obviously that's subject to debate. But my question would stem from a number of ANC's top leadership not being elected into the NEC. There are talks of a cabinet reshuffle that is pending. Does this offer the president an opportunity to almost live up to those expectations of when he was initially elected? And obviously these last few months before we get to next year's election would be critical.
I think the last conference of the ANC has simplified the political environment in which the president finds himself in within the party, and gives him potential, like many presidents before him, to fashion the party in his own image. But holding that constant for a while, what is going to upset that stability and power consolidation are potential adverse findings, which may border on criminality, whatever the case may be, around Phala. For example, we've not seen what report the South African Reserve Bank has, or what the SARB makes of the foreign currency control mechanisms in that Phala scandal. So there remains some issues within Phala that may come back to raise the issue again, both in Parliament and at the level of the party.
Well, Dr. Mtimka,
but when it comes to what you're asking about the likelihood to consolidate support at the level of government in terms of a cabinet reshuffle, he's been given now a better environment in which to do that than was the case out of Nasrec 1.
Okay. Now, you tweeted a summary of your thoughts regarding key dynamics in the party system in 2023 in South Africa. Some of those issues we've already talked about. There are other issues such as the DA, their National Conference Survival Strategy Key, the EFF, and new parties. Walk us through those elements, if you will.
Sure. So the DA has got a make-or-break conference. It's coming up, I think, within the first 2 terms of the year. I don't know which date specifically. Going to this conference, the party has got a soul-searching question of how to survive within the context of new entrants, some of which can be said to be splinters from the party itself, or targeting the centrist support base. So it needs to find a survival strategy and messaging for that. These new entrants are going to be interesting to deal with because among them it's Action SA, it's Rise, as well as, mainly Action SA and Rise. It has to contend with how it's going to position its value offering to the black middle class particularly, notwithstanding the emergence of more parties that are contesting that space. When it comes to the EFF...
Sorry, before we go to the EFF, allow me to throw in a question around the DA, and that is around black leadership. And we've seen an exodus, for want of a better description, in the last year, if you will, of a black leadership. Will this be an issue for them? Is it something that they can deal with? Will it be on their agenda?
It doesn't seem that there is viable political warm bodies within the party who are going to take that fight to the conference. And I'm saying so because a lot of the leaders, save for Ngaba in the Eastern Cape, and those that are mainly in parliament and some youth structures, are no longer having a good base within the party to launch the politics of representation, of black representation idea to this conference. I suspect that the party itself, some of the strategies of the party, are going to have to grapple with the issue of whether the party is comfortable attracting support in South Africa based on what we did in the Western Cape messaging, or they want to reopen again this idea about the politics of black representation within its leadership. But so far, there hasn't been that idea of politics or challenging the representativeness of the party leadership hasn't surfaced at all. And that's why because there are these splinter parties, because it seems to me that those politics of transforming the party are shifting away from the DA more to these splinter parties.
Now, you obviously wanted to talk about the EFF, so we'll let you do that, and then we'll come back to a couple more questions. Certainly some coming in through from our viewers, if you'll carry on, please.
Sure. So the Economic Freedom Fighters is in its 10th year of running in the country, something which they are very chuffed about because the cold outside the ANC thesis has been proved wrong as far as their party development and growth trajectory is concerned. It's still hovering at about 10%, which is very good for any startup party in South Africa. I think that the party last year had a lot of activities with party-based activities, such as provincial conferences, among other things. This looks like a quiet year as far as party-based processes are concerned. I think, though, they are going to have an exciting year in Parliament, and the EFF, in its 10th year, is going to find itself searching within Parliament how to make itself impactful as a party, facing a president who may contend with one scandal or another, but also if they're not treading carefully around being seen to be challenging processes of cleaning up the state, they may stumble on that. And I think they're also going to want to make their presence felt in local government, because they know that they need some presence at that level in order for them to have to better their prospects for growth come the 2024 and 2026 elections.
Now, you've also talked about new parties. You've described it as a ripe moment and the opportunity for creative party building. Unpack that for us.
Sure. So I'm saying it's a ripe moment for new parties in South Africa, because the dominant party system is declining. And what we have seen since the formation of, say, maybe the UDF, because in South Africa, the UDM, in 1999, and all the parties that have been formed since then, up until Action SA and the new kids on the block, is that it's not given where support designated for the ANC and the DA goes when it's no longer, when supporters are no longer supporting those two main parties. It's not a given that they leave to join a party on the far left or center left or whatever the case may be. So the electoral market is very open in South Africa to actually come in, contest, and secure enough a base of supporters to be of votes to be represented in parliament. And in fact, that proves the strategic correctness of choosing a proportional representation system, because what that does is it allows for different constituencies or sections of society to be represented in the National Assembly. So these parties are coming at a time when the dominant party is facing a crisis, the Democratic Alliance, which is the main opposition, is facing a crisis, and that support base is there for the taking. And it's not a given that they are going to go to the EFF or the Freedom Front Plus, even if those parties have been coming up, or in fact the IFP. So it's a right moment in that sense. What I mean by creative party building is that these parties that are coming in need to energize not necessarily only those voters that are disheartened by the two main parties, but also to energize new voters to go to the polls and vote and exercise their democratic right. It has to be creative, because we are facing a situation where political institutions are losing credibility as far as voter attitudes are concerned. And therefore, it creates an environment in which voters are likely to disengage than want to choose among the parties. So there's a challenge then for those parties to build parties using new technologies that allow people to get to join and take action, while at the same time energizing those people to mobilize in their communities for people to go and vote for them come election time.
So how important a factor will new voters, first-time voters in particular, be? Now, we know that young people ordinarily, they're impacted by the numerous challenges that South Africa is facing. When we look at unemployment, the majority of those that are unemployed are young people between the ages of 15 and 35, if you will. So what is the offering that political parties can make to these young people, firstly? And secondly, there's also a group of disenfranchised voters who've voted once or twice before, but in the last couple of elections have chosen not to vote, obviously, because they are disoriented with what they voted for and what's actually transpired.
The first point to acknowledge is that liberal democracy hasn't worked for all South Africans. We are in a situation where people feel that the outcomes from political and economic processes benefit a few well-collected elite, be they in business or in politics, and the country belongs to them. And therefore, many people are surviving outside of the mainstream political economic space. However, that's not sustainable, because now we are seeing what the ANC called the lumpen proletariat, the rise of dangerous groups, if you like, as evidenced by crime, the rise of mafia type operators within different sectors of the economy of the country that are challenging the ways in which opportunities are distributed in those sectors. You've got the construction mafia, which was the subject of my PhD. You've got these mafia that are entering the mining sector, coal sector. So South Africa is unworkable. We need a situation in which more than just politicians or parties that are coming are imagining ways, better ways in which we create an inclusive political economy in the country where people can participate meaningfully.
Dr. Ongama Mtimka, appreciate your time this afternoon.